The cowboy's shadow fell across her hands just as the last rays of sunlight caught the gold band, and Ryder Dalton stopped dead in his tracks when he saw the woman on the porch steps polishing something that seemed to break her heart with every careful stroke of the cloth. It was late summer in 1882, and Loveland, Colorado had been suffering through a drought that left everyone's nerves frayed and tempers short. But the sight of this stranger sitting outside the boarding house made everything else fade into insignificance. "Evening, miss," Ryder said, removing his hat as he approached the wooden steps. His horse, a bay gelding named Thunder, snorted softly behind him, tired from the long ride from Denver where Ryder had been delivering cattle for his employer. The woman looked up, and Ryder felt something shift in his chest at the sight of her face. She had dark hair that fell in waves past her shoulders, and eyes the color of honey that were currently red-rimmed from crying. She was young, probably around 23 or 24, dressed in a simple gray traveling dress that had seen better days. In her hands she held a simple gold ring that caught the dying light. "Good evening," she replied softly, her voice carrying a hint of an accent he could not quite place. She quickly tried to wipe her eyes with the back of her hand, embarrassed to be caught in such a vulnerable moment. Ryder gestured to the steps. "Mind if I rest here a moment? Been riding since dawn and my legs are about to give out." She nodded, moving over slightly to make room. Ryder sat down, leaving a respectful distance between them, and stretched out his long legs. He was 26, tall and lean from years of hard work, with brown hair that tended to fall into his eyes and a face weathered by sun and wind. His hands were calloused and scarred, the hands of a man who knew hard labor. "I am Ryder Dalton," he said after a moment. "I work at the Double Bar Ranch about 10 miles north of here." "Diana Northwood," she replied, her fingers still moving over the ring with the soft cloth. "I arrived in Loveland this morning on the train from Chicago." Ryder noticed how her hands trembled slightly as she worked. The ring was clearly important to her, but he also noticed that she was not wearing it. "That is a fine piece," he said carefully, not wanting to pry but curious about what brought such sorrow to her eyes. Diana looked down at the ring, and a fresh tear rolled down her cheek. "It was my grandmother's wedding band," she said quietly. "She gave it to me before she passed away last year. She told me to wear it when I found a love as true as hers had been with my grandfather." "It is beautiful," Ryder said, meaning it. The ring was simple but elegant, with a delicate pattern etched into the gold that spoke of fine craftsmanship. "I cannot wear it," Diana said, her voice breaking slightly. "I came all the way to Colorado because I was supposed to marry a man named Thomas Whitmore. We had been corresponding for 6 months, and he seemed kind and honest in his letters. He said he owned a successful dry goods store here in Loveland and wanted a wife to share his life with." Ryder felt his jaw tighten. He knew Thomas Whitmore, and the man was neither kind nor honest. "Let me guess," he said slowly. "You got here and found out the truth?" Diana nodded miserably. "The dry goods store belongs to his father, and Thomas works there only when his father forces him to. He is a gambler and a drunk, and when I arrived at the address he gave me, I found him in the saloon, already drunk at noon. When I introduced myself, he laughed and said he had forgotten all about me. He said he had been writing to 3 different women and could not remember which was which." "That sounds like Thomas," Ryder said grimly. "I am sorry you came all this way for nothing." "I spent every penny I had on the train ticket," Diana said, her voice shaking. "I sold my mother's jewelry and most of my possessions to afford the journey. I have nowhere to go and no way to get back to Chicago. Mrs. Henderson at the boarding house was kind enough to let me stay tonight on credit, but I cannot impose on her kindness forever. I have been sitting here trying to figure out what to do." Ryder was silent for a moment, thinking. He had seen plenty of hardship in his 26 years, but there was something about Diana's situation that struck him deeply. She had been brave enough to travel halfway across the country for a chance at a new life, only to have her hopes crushed by a man who was not worth the dirt on her shoes. "Can you cook?" he asked suddenly. Diana looked at him in surprise. Yes, I can cook and clean and sew. My mother made sure I learned all the necessary skills before she passed away 5 years ago. The Double Bar Ranch has been looking for a housekeeper since old Mrs. Patterson passed away 2 months ago, Ryder said. The owner, Mr. Douglas, is a fair man, and he pays decent wages. The work is hard, but you would have a place to live and 3 meals a day. If you are interested, I could speak to him on your behalf. Diana stared at him, hope flickering in her eyes for the first time since he had sat down. You would do that for me? You do not even know me. I know you have had a rough day and could use a break, Ryder said simply. And I know you're a long way from home with nowhere to turn. My mother always taught me to help folks when they needed it, and I reckon you need it right about now. I would be forever grateful, Diana said, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. But these were tears of relief rather than despair. I am not afraid of hard work, I promise you. I will earn my keep. I believe you, Ryder said, getting to his feet. Give me a moment to stable Thunder and get cleaned up. Then we can have some supper at the hotel restaurant. We can talk about the details and head out to the ranch first thing in the morning if you are agreeable. Thank you, Diana whispered, clutching the ring to her chest. Thank you so much. Ryder nodded and headed toward the livery stable, leading Thunder by the reins. As he walked, he found himself thinking about Diana's face, about the way the light had caught in her hair, about the sadness in her eyes. He had met plenty of women in his life, but something about this one was different. Maybe it was the courage it took to travel so far alone, or maybe it was the way she treasured that ring even though she could not wear it yet. Whatever it was, Ryder knew that meeting Diana Northwood was going to change his life in ways he could not yet imagine. After stabling Thunder and washing up at the pump behind the boarding house, Ryder met Diana in the small dining room of the hotel next door. The room was plain but clean, with checkered tablecloths and simple wooden chairs. Diana had washed her face and tidied her hair, and though her eyes were still red, she held herself with a dignity that Ryder admired. They ordered beef stew and fresh bread, and as they ate, Diana told him more about her life in Chicago. She had grown up in a modest home with her mother and grandmother after her father died in a factory accident when she was 12. Her mother had worked as a seamstress, and Diana had helped her from a young age. When her mother passed away from pneumonia, Diana had lived with her grandmother until the old woman's death the previous year. After grandmother died, I had no family left, Diana explained, breaking off a piece of bread. I was living in a boarding house and working at a dress shop, but the pay was barely enough to cover my rent. When I saw Thomas's advertisement in the newspaper looking for a wife, it seemed like a sign. He wrote such lovely letters about Colorado and his life here. I thought perhaps it was my chance for a fresh start. Thomas always was good with words when he was sober, Ryder said, but words do not mean much if there is no character behind them. I learned that lesson today, Diana said quietly. She pulled the ring from her pocket and looked at it again. My grandmother wore this ring for 52 years. She told me stories about how she met my grandfather at a church social in Ireland, how he courted her properly, and how they built a life together from nothing. They came to America with just a trunk of belongings and their love for each other. I always wanted a love like that. That is the kind of love worth waiting for, Ryder said, surprised by the intensity of his own feelings. He had never been much for romance, had always been too busy working and saving money to think much about settling down. But listening to Diana talk about her grandparents, seeing the way she cherished that ring, made him wonder what he had been missing. They talked long into the evening, and Ryder found himself telling Diana about his own life. He had grown up on a small farm in Nebraska, the youngest of 4 brothers. When his parents died in a wagon accident 7 years ago, the farm had gone to his oldest brother, and Ryder had headed west looking for work. He had drifted from ranch to ranch until he landed at the Double Bar 3 years ago, and he had been there ever since. Mr. Douglas treats his workers well, Ryder explained. He pays fair wages and does not work us beyond reason. The ranch house is big, plenty of room for a housekeeper to have her own quarters. Mrs. Patterson had a nice set of rooms on the first floor with her own sitting area and bedroom. You would have privacy and respect. It sounds wonderful, Diana said, hope shining in her eyes. I cannot believe my luck in meeting you today, Mr. Dalton. Just Ryder, please, he said with a smile. And I reckon it was not luck. My mother used to say that God puts people in our path when we need them most. Maybe that is what happened today. Diana smiled, and Ryder felt his heart skip a beat. When she smiled, her whole face lit up, and he could see past the sadness to the vibrant, strong woman underneath. They left the hotel as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Ryder walked Diana back to the boarding house, and they stood on the porch where they had first met just a few hours earlier. I will come by at first light, Ryder said. Wear something practical for riding. It is about 10 miles to the ranch, and the road can be rough. I will be ready, Diana promised. And Ryder, thank you again. You have given me hope when I thought I had none left. Sleep well, Diana, Ryder said softly, and then he turned and walked back toward the livery where he had arranged to sleep in the loft for the night. As he climbed up into the hayloft, Ryder found himself thinking about Diana's grandmother's ring, about the love it represented, and about the way Diana's face had looked in the lamplight. He had known her for only a few hours, but already she had worked her way into his thoughts in a way no woman ever had before. He told himself it was just kindness, just his natural instinct to help someone in need, but deep down he knew it was something more. The next morning dawned clear and bright, with just a hint of coolness in the air that promised fall was on its way. Ryder was up before the sun, checking on Thunder and making sure everything was ready for the ride to the ranch. He had stopped by the general store and purchased a few supplies that Diana might need, including a wide-brimmed hat to protect her face from the sun. When he arrived at the boarding house, Diana was already waiting on the porch, dressed in a simple brown skirt and white blouse that was more practical than her traveling dress from the day before. She had tied her hair back in a long braid that fell down her back, and she carried a small carpet bag that contained all her worldly possessions. "Good morning," she said, her face anxious but determined. "Morning," Ryder replied, handing her the hat. "You will need this. The sun gets fierce once it is up properly." Diana's eyes widened. "You did not have to buy me anything." "Consider it a welcome to Colorado gift," Ryder said. "And come on, let me introduce you to Thunder." The bay gelding was waiting patiently, already saddled and ready to go. Diana approached cautiously, and Thunder snuffled at her hand, looking for treats. "He is beautiful," Diana said, stroking the horse's neck. "He is a good horse," Ryder agreed. "Steady and reliable, which is what you need out here. Have you ridden much?" "A little when I was younger," Diana admitted, "but it has been years." "You will ride with me then," Ryder said. "It is safer that way, and Thunder is strong enough to carry us both." He swung up into the saddle and then reached down to help Diana up behind him. She hesitated for just a moment before taking his hand, and then she was settling onto the horse behind him, her arms wrapping around his waist to steady herself. "Hold on tight," Ryder said, trying to ignore the way his heart was racing at her closeness. "We have a long ride ahead." They set off at a steady pace, leaving Loveland behind as they headed north into the rolling hills and valleys that characterize this part of Colorado. The land was beautiful in the morning light, golden grasslands dotted with stands of cottonwood trees and rocky outcroppings that thrust up from the earth like ancient monuments. In the distance, the Rocky Mountains rose up in majestic peaks, still dusted with snow even in late summer. Diana was quiet at first, but as they rode, she began to relax, her grip on Ryder's waist loosening slightly. The rhythm of the horse's gait was soothing, and the beauty of the landscape was unlike anything she had seen in Chicago. "It is so different from the city," she said after a while. "So open and wild." "That is what I love about it," Ryder replied. "Out here you can breathe. You can see for miles and miles. It makes you feel small, but in a good way. It reminds you that there is more to the world than your own troubles." "I can understand that," Diana said softly. "I feel like I have been carrying the weight of the world for so long, but out here, it does not seem quite so heavy." They rode in comfortable silence for a while, and Ryder found himself very aware of Diana's presence behind him. the way her arms felt around his waist, the faint scent of lavender soap that drifted from her hair. He had to remind himself that she had just been through a terrible disappointment and needed a friend, not a man making advances. But it was hard not to think about how right it felt to have her there with him. About halfway to the ranch, they stopped to rest Thunder and eat the biscuits and cheese that Ryder had packed for the journey. They sat in the shade of a large cottonwood tree, and Diana pulled out her grandmother's ring again, polishing it absently with the edge of her sleeve. "You really treasure that ring," Ryder observed. "It is all I have left of my family," Diana said. "When I hold it, I can remember my grandmother's voice, the stories she told me, the way she always believed that love was the most important thing in the world. She and my grandfather had so little when they started out, but they had each other, and that was enough." "My parents were like that too," Ryder said. "They worked hard their whole lives, but they always had time for each other. Even when things were tough, they faced it together. That is the kind of marriage I would want someday if I ever found the right woman." Diana looked at him curiously. "You have never been married?" "Never even been close," Ryder admitted. "I have moved around so much. Never stayed in one place long enough to put down roots. And most of the women I have met were either already spoken for or not interested in a cowboy with more dust than dollars." "I think you are selling yourself short," Diana said gently. "You are kind and honest, and you have helped a complete stranger without asking for anything in return. Those are qualities worth more than money." Ryder felt his face heat up at the compliment. "Well, thank you for saying so, but enough about me. Tell me more about Chicago. I have never been to a big city like that." Diana described life in Chicago, the crowded streets and the noise, the factories and the grand houses where the wealthy lived. She talked about the dress shop where she had worked, creating beautiful gowns for women who had more money than they knew what to do with. She described the parks and the lake, the theaters and the churches, painting a picture of a world so different from the one Ryder knew. "It sounds exciting," Ryder said when she finished. "It was in some ways," Diana agreed, "but it could also be lonely. There were people everywhere, but I often felt like I was invisible, just another face in the crowd. Here, even though there is so much space, I feel more seen, if that makes sense." "It makes perfect sense," Ryder said. "Out here, people matter. Each person has value because there are not so many of us. In the city, I reckon it is easy to get lost." They mounted up again and continued their journey. As they rode, Ryder pointed out various landmarks and told Diana about the area. He showed her where the river ran through Douglas's property, where the cattle grazed in the summer, and where the winter pastures were located. He talked about the other ranch hands, describing their personalities so Diana would know what to expect when she met them. "There is old Charlie, who has been working ranches since before I was born. He is gruff but kind-hearted, and he makes the best coffee you have ever tasted. Then there is young Billy, who is only 19 and still learning the ropes. He is eager and enthusiastic but tends to get himself into trouble. And there is Marcus, who is quiet but the best horseman I have ever seen. He can gentle a wild Mustang in half the time it takes anyone else." "They sound like good men," Diana said. "They are," Ryder confirmed. "We all look out for each other. It is like having a family again in a way." As the sun climbed higher in the sky, they finally crested a hill, and Ryder pulled Thunder to a stop. "There it is," he said, pointing down into the valley below, "the Double Bar Ranch." Diana leaned forward to get a better look, and her breath caught. The ranch was spread out across the valley floor, a collection of buildings surrounding a large 2-story house. There were barns and corrals, bunkhouses and storage sheds, all neatly maintained and arranged. Green pastures stretched out in every direction, dotted with cattle that grazed peacefully in the morning sun. A line of cottonwood trees marked the path of a creek that ran through the property, providing precious water in this dry land. "It is beautiful," Diana breathed. "Mr. Douglas has worked hard to build this place," Ryder said proudly. "He started with nothing 20 years ago, and now he has one of the finest spreads in northern Colorado." They rode down into the valley, and as they approached the main house, a man emerged from the barn. He was in his 50s, with graying hair and a weathered face. dressed in worn work clothes and a battered hat. When he saw Ryder, his face broke into a smile. "Ryder, my boy, I was wondering when you would get back from Denver. Did the cattle delivery go well?" "Went just fine, Mr. Douglas," Ryder said, pulling Thunder to a stop in front of the house. "And I brought someone I would like you to meet." He dismounted and then helped Diana down, noting the way she straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin, preparing to make a good impression despite her nervousness. "Mr. Douglas, this is Miss Diana Northwood. She arrived in Loveland yesterday from Chicago, and she is in need of work. I thought she might be a good fit for the housekeeper position." Mr. Douglas looked Diana over with shrewd eyes, but his expression was kind. "Is that so? Well, Miss Northwood, it is a pleasure to meet you. We surely could use someone to take care of the house. The place has been falling apart since Mrs. Patterson passed, God rest her soul." "I am a hard worker, Mr. Douglas," Diana said, her voice steady despite her nerves. "I can cook, clean, mend clothes, and manage a household. I promise if you give me a chance, you will not regret it." "Ryder has good judgment about people," Mr. Douglas said. "If he vouches for you, that is good enough for me. The position pays $30 a month plus room and board. You would have your own quarters in the house, and you would be responsible for cooking meals for me in the hands, keeping the house clean, and doing laundry and mending. The work is not easy, especially when we are in the busy season, but I treat my employees fair and pay on time." "That sounds more than fair, sir," Diana said, relief flooding her face. "Thank you for giving me this opportunity." "No need to thank me yet," Mr. Douglas said with a chuckle. "Wait until you have been here a week and see if you still feel grateful. Come on, let me show you the house and your quarters." Ryder carried Diana's carpet bag as Mr. Douglas led them into the ranch house. The front door opened into a large main room with a stone fireplace at one end and a dining table that could seat a dozen people. The furniture was solid and well-made but dusty, and there were cobwebs in the corners. A staircase led to the second floor, and doorways opened to other rooms. "The kitchen is through here," Mr. Douglas said, leading them through a doorway. The kitchen was spacious, with a large cast-iron stove, a pump for water, and wooden counters. Pots and pans hung from hooks on the walls, and there was a pantry stocked with supplies. "Mrs. Patterson's old rooms are off the kitchen here," Mr. Douglas continued, opening another door. The rooms consisted of a small sitting room with a comfortable chair and a table, and a bedroom beyond with a brass bed covered in a faded quilt. There was also a small washroom with a basin and mirror. "It is perfect," Diana said, looking around with wonder. After months of living in a cramped boarding house room in Chicago, these quarters seemed like a palace. "Good," Mr. Douglas said. "You can get settled in, and then maybe you can rustle up some dinner for us. The boys will be coming in hungry around noon." "I would be happy to," Diana said. "Is there anything in particular you would like?" "Anything that is hot and filling will be welcome," Mr. Douglas assured her. "We have been surviving on Charlie's attempts at cooking, and let me tell you, the man has many talents, but cooking is not one of them." After Mr. Douglas left, Ryder helped Diana unpack her meager belongings. It did not take long, as she had so little. Besides the clothes she wore and a few changes of undergarments, she had a hairbrush, a small Bible that had belonged to her mother, a daguerreotype photograph of her grandparents, and the precious ring. "You are sure you will be all right here?" Ryder asked as Diana carefully placed the photograph on the bedside table. "I will be fine," Diana assured him. "This is more than I could have hoped for. You have been so kind to me, Ryder. I do not know how I will ever repay you." "You do not owe me anything," Ryder said. "I am just glad things worked out. Now I better get to work before Mr. Douglas thinks I'm shirking. If you need anything at all, just let me or one of the other hands know." "I will," Diana promised. "Thank you again, Ryder." As Ryder left the house and headed toward the barn, he found himself glancing back at the kitchen window, hoping for a glimpse of Diana. He needed to get his mind back on work, but it was proving difficult. In less than 24 hours, this woman had turned his world upside down, and he had a feeling things would never be quite the same again. Diana spent the rest of the morning exploring the kitchen and familiarizing herself with the supplies. She found flour and salt, dried beans and preserved vegetables, smoked ham and fresh eggs from the chickens that scratched around the yard. By the time noon rolled around, she had prepared a substantial meal of ham steaks, fried potatoes, biscuits, and gravy, with dried apple pie for dessert. The ranch hands came trooping in right on time, and Diana felt a flutter of nerves as she watched them file into the dining room. There was old Charlie, just as Ryder had described, with a weathered face and kind eyes. Young Billy was fresh-faced and eager. Doffing his hat politely when he saw Diana, Marcus was tall and quiet, nodding respectfully but not saying much. And then there was Ryder, dusty from work, but smiling when he saw the spread Diana had laid out on the table. "Well now," Mr. Douglas said, taking his seat at the head of the table, "see, this looks better than anything we have seen in months. Miss Northwood, you may have just saved us all from starvation." The men laughed and dug into the food with enthusiasm, and Diana felt a warm glow of pride as she heard their appreciative comments. Cooking had always been something she enjoyed, a way to show care for others, and it felt good to see her efforts appreciated. "This is the best meal I have had since my mother's cooking," Billy declared through a mouthful of biscuit. "Mind your manners, boy," Charlie admonished, but he was smiling. "But the kid is right, Miss Northwood. This is mighty fine." "Thank you all," Diana said, feeling her cheeks flush with pleasure. "I'm glad you are enjoying it." After the meal, the men returned to work, and Diana set about cleaning up and organizing the kitchen properly. She scrubbed the floors and counters, washed the windows, and made an inventory of supplies. By the time evening rolled around, she was exhausted but satisfied. She had a job, a place to live, and the respect of her employer and the ranch hands. It was more than she had dared to hope for when she woke up that morning. That evening, after preparing and serving supper and cleaning up afterward, Diana finally had time to herself. She sat in her little sitting room with the lamp burning low, taking out her grandmother's ring once more. She polished it slowly, thinking about the events of the past 2 days. Her life had changed so dramatically, from the heartbreak of discovering Thomas Whitmore's deception to the unexpected kindness of a cowboy named Ryder Dalton. As she worked, she found herself thinking about Ryder, about his easy smile and gentle manner, about the way he had helped her without hesitation or expectation of reward. She had known him for such a short time, but already she felt a connection that went beyond simple gratitude. When he looked at her with those honest eyes, she felt seen in a way she had not felt in a very long time. Diana held the ring up to the lamplight, watching the way the gold gleamed. "I will wear you someday, grandmother," she whispered. "When I find a love worthy of you, I will wear you with pride." The days turned into weeks, and Diana settled into a comfortable routine at the Double Bar Ranch. She rose early each morning to prepare breakfast, spending her days cooking, cleaning, and managing the household. The work was hard but satisfying, and she took pride in the way the ranch house began to transform under her care. Windows sparkled, floors gleamed, and the smell of fresh bread and good cooking filled the air. The ranch hands treated her with respect and kindness, and she quickly became fond of each of them in different ways. Charlie taught her how to make his famous coffee, a secret recipe that involved eggshells and a pinch of salt. Billy entertained her with stories of his adventures and misadventures, making her laugh with his youthful enthusiasm. Marcus said little, but he always touched his hat politely when he saw her, and once carved her a beautiful wooden spoon as a gift. But it was Ryder who occupied most of her thoughts. They fell into an easy friendship, talking during meals and in the evenings when work was done. Ryder would often find excuses to come to the house, offering to help with heavy chores or to fix things that needed mending. Diana found herself looking forward to these moments, treasuring their conversations and the comfortable silence they could share. One evening in early October, about 6 weeks after Diana had arrived at the ranch, she was sitting on the front porch mending a shirt when Ryder came walking up from the barn. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and red, and there was a crisp chill in the air that spoke of the coming winter. "Evening, Diana," Ryder said, climbing the steps to join her on the porch. "Mind if I sit?" "Please do," Diana said, setting aside her mending. "The sunset is beautiful tonight." "It is," Ryder agreed, settling into the chair beside her. They sat in comfortable silence for a few moments, watching the colors shift and change across the sky. "Diana," Ryder said finally, his voice hesitant, I wanted to ask you something if you do not mind." "Of course," Diana replied, turning to look at him. "You can ask me anything." "There is a harvest dance in Loveland next Saturday night," Ryder said, not quite meeting her eyes. "Most of the town turns out for it, and it is always a good time. I was wondering if you might like to go with me. As friends, of course," he added quickly. "I just thought you might enjoy getting off the ranch for an evening and meeting some of the townspeople." Diana felt her heart skip a beat. She had been hoping Ryder might ask her to spend time with him outside of the ranch, but she had not wanted to assume. "I would love to go," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Thank you for asking me." Ryder's face broke into a wide smile. "Really? That is wonderful. I will borrow Mr. Douglas's wagon and we can make an afternoon of it. Maybe have supper at the hotel before the dance." "That sounds perfect," Diana said, feeling a flutter of excitement in her chest. The week leading up to the dance seemed to crawl by. Diana found herself constantly thinking about the upcoming evening, wondering what she would wear and how the night would go. She had only one good dress, the gray traveling dress she had worn when she first arrived in Loveland, and she spent her precious free time letting out the hem and adding a new collar made from lace she had carefully saved. On the day of the dance, Diana took extra care with her appearance. She washed her hair and pinned it up in a style she remembered from her days working at the dress shop, leaving a few soft curls framing her face. The gray dress looked much better with its new additions, and she pinned a simple brooch that had been her mother's at the collar. When she emerged from her room, she found Ryder waiting by the wagon, and the look on his face made all her efforts worthwhile. He was dressed in his Sunday best, a clean shirt and vest with his hair neatly combed and his boots polished. He looked handsome and nervous, and Diana felt a rush of affection for him. "You look beautiful," Ryder said, his voice slightly awed. "Thank you," Diana replied, feeling her cheeks warm. "You look very handsome yourself." The ride into Loveland was pleasant, the autumn air cool but not cold, the leaves on the cottonwood trees turning gold. They talked easily, as they always did, but there was an undercurrent of excitement that had not been there before. This was not just two friends spending time together. This felt like something more, something with the potential to become important. They arrived in Loveland in the late afternoon and had supper at the hotel restaurant, the same place where they had shared their first meal together all those weeks ago. Diana could not help but think about how much had changed since that evening. She had been desperate and lost then, heartbroken and afraid. Now she had a job she loved, a home that felt safe, and a man sitting across from her who made her heart race with just a smile. After supper, they walked to the town hall where the dance was being held. The building was decorated with bunting and lanterns, and music spilled out into the street from the band inside. People were arriving from all directions, families and couples and groups of young people, all dressed in their finest and ready for an evening of fun. Inside, the hall was warm and bright, with tables laden with food and punch, and a space cleared for dancing. The band was made up of local musicians, a fiddle player, a guitarist, and a man with a harmonica, and they were playing a lively tune that had people clapping along. Ryder led Diana onto the dance floor, and she felt a thrill as his hand touched her waist. She had not danced since before her mother died, but the steps came back to her easily, and soon they were whirling around the floor with the other couples. "You are a good dancer," Ryder said, smiling down at her. "So are you," Diana replied, breathless from the exertion and the proximity to him. "Where did you learn?" "My mother taught all of us boys," Ryder said. "She said a man should know how to dance properly because it was a way to show respect to his partner." They danced several dances, fast and slow, and Diana felt happier than she had in years. Between dances, Ryder introduced her to various townspeople, and Diana was pleased by how welcoming everyone was. Several women complimented her dress, and a few told her they had heard good things about her work at the Double Bar Ranch. During a break in the music, Diana and Ryder stepped outside to get some fresh air. The night was clear and cool, with stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. They walked a little way from the hall, finding a quiet spot where they could talk without shouting over the noise. "Are you having a good time?" Ryder asked. A wonderful time, Diana said honestly. Thank you for bringing me tonight. It has been so long since I did something just for fun. I am glad, Ryder said. He was quiet for a moment, and then he said, Diana, I need to tell you something. I have been trying to find the right words for weeks now, but I cannot seem to get them right. Diana felt her heart begin to pound. What is it, Ryder? I know we have not known each other very long, Ryder began, his words coming out in a rush. And I know you came here with your heart set on someone else, even if that someone turned out to be a fool who did not deserve you. But I cannot keep quiet anymore. From the moment I saw you sitting on those porch steps polishing that ring, I felt something I have never felt before. Every day I spend with you just makes it stronger. Diana, I am falling in love with you. Diana felt tears spring to her eyes, but these were tears of joy. Oh, Ryder, she whispered, I have been falling in love with you too. I did not want to say anything because I was afraid you only saw me as a friend, as someone you had helped out of kindness. It started as kindness, Ryder admitted, but it became so much more. You are strong and brave and kind, and when you smile, it feels like the sun coming out after a storm. I know I do not have much to offer. I am just a cowboy with more dreams than dollars. But if you would give me a chance, I promise I will spend the rest of my life trying to make you happy. You do not need to offer me anything but yourself, Diana said, reaching up to touch his face. You have already made me happier than I ever thought possible. I love you, Ryder Dalton. Ryder pulled her close and kissed her. A soft, gentle kiss that held all the emotion they had been holding back for weeks. Diana melted into his embrace, feeling like she had finally come home. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling, their faces reflecting the joy they felt. Does this mean you will let me court you properly? Ryder asked. Yes, Diana said. Yes, 1,000 times yes. They went back inside the dance hall hand in hand, and if anyone noticed the change between them, they were kind enough not to comment. But Diana knew that everything had shifted, that her life had just taken another unexpected turn, this time toward something wonderful. The autumn passed in a blur of happiness. Ryder courted Diana with old-fashioned courtesy, bringing her wildflowers he picked on his rides, sitting with her on the porch in the evenings talking about their dreams and hopes, stealing kisses when no one was watching. The other ranch hands noticed the change and teased them good-naturedly, but it was clear they approved of the match. Mr. Douglas was particularly pleased. I knew when Ryder brought you here that day that something good would come of it, he told Diana one evening. You two are good for each other. You have given Ryder something to work toward, and he has given you a reason to smile again. As winter approached, the work on the ranch intensified. The cattle had to be moved to winter pastures, fences had to be repaired, and wood had to be cut and stacked for the cold months ahead. Diana threw herself into her work, making sure the house was prepared for winter, preserving food, and making warm clothes for the men. In December on Christmas Eve, Ryder asked Diana to take a walk with him despite the cold. They bundled up in warm coats and scarves and walked out to a small rise overlooking the ranch. The moon was full, casting silver light across the snow-covered ground, and the air was crisp and clean. Diana, Ryder said, taking her hands in his, these past few months with you have been the happiest of my life. You have brought light and laughter into my days, and I cannot imagine my future without you in it. I know I should probably wait, should take more time, but I do not want to wait. I want to spend every day for the rest of my life with you. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. When he opened it, Diana gasped. Inside was a simple gold band, not as ornate as her grandmother's ring, but beautiful in its own way. Diana Northwood, will you marry me? Ryder asked, his voice shaking slightly with emotion. Diana felt tears streaming down her cheeks, but she was smiling so hard her face hurt. Yes, Ryder, yes, I will marry you. Ryder slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly. Then he kissed her, a deep, passionate kiss that warmed them both despite the cold. When they finally pulled apart, Diana was laughing and crying at the same time. "Wait," she said suddenly, "I have something too." She reached into her own pocket and pulled out the small cloth bag that held her grandmother's ring. She had carried it with her every day since arriving in Colorado, a reminder of the love she hoped to find. Now, with shaking fingers, she opened the bag and pulled out the gold band. "My grandmother told me to wear this when I found a love as true as hers," Diana said softly. "I want to wear it now, as a symbol of the love we share and the promise of our future together." She slipped her grandmother's ring onto her other hand, and the two rings gleamed in the moonlight, one old and one new, both representing love and commitment and the promise of forever. "It looks perfect on you," Ryder whispered, kissing her hand. They stood there for a long time, holding each other close and looking out over the ranch that had brought them together. Diana thought about the journey that had led her to this moment, about the heartbreak and disappointment that had seemed so crushing at the time, but had ultimately brought her to exactly where she was meant to be. "I love you," she whispered against Ryder's chest. "I love you too," he replied, "now and forever." They were married in January of 1883, in a simple ceremony at the church in Loveland. The whole town seemed to turn out for the wedding, along with all the hands from the Double Bar Ranch. Mr. Douglas gave Diana away, standing in for the father she had lost so many years ago. Charlie and Billy served as witnesses, and Marcus played a beautiful song on a harmonica during the ceremony. Diana wore a new dress she had made herself, a simple but elegant gown of cream-colored fabric with lace trim. On her hands she wore both rings, her grandmother's band on her left hand and Ryder's engagement ring on her right. Her hair was pinned up with small flowers woven through it, and she carried a bouquet of dried flowers that Mrs. Henderson from the boarding house had prepared for her. Ryder wore a new suit that Mr. Douglas had insisted on buying him as a wedding present, and Diana thought he had never looked more handsome. When he saw her walking down the aisle, his eyes filled with tears, and Diana knew beyond any doubt that she had found the love her grandmother had always told her about. The ceremony was short but meaningful. They exchanged vows in voices that shook with emotion, promising to love and honor each other for as long as they both lived. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Ryder kissed Diana with such tenderness that many of the women in attendance had to dab at their eyes. After the ceremony, there was a celebration at the hotel, with food and music and dancing. Diana found herself passed from partner to partner as all the ranch hands wanted to dance with the bride, but she always found her way back to Ryder, her husband, the man who had changed her life. Late in the evening, as they were preparing to leave for the ranch, Mrs. Henderson pulled Diana aside. "I have been running that boarding house for 20 years, she said, her eyes misty. "And I have seen many young women come through, some looking for husbands, some running from trouble. But I have never seen a love story quite like yours. That day you arrived, you were so lost and hurt, and look at you now. You are glowing with happiness. Hold on to that, dear girl. Hold on to it and never let it go." "I will," Diana promised, hugging the older woman. "Thank you for your kindness when I needed it most." Mr. Douglas had given them the use of a small cabin on the ranch property, a place that had been built for his own son who had died young. He had insisted they needed their own space, somewhere they could build their life together. The cabin was modest but cozy, with a bedroom, a small sitting room, and a kitchen area. Diana had spent the past few weeks making it into a home, sewing curtains and arranging furniture, preparing for their new life together. When they arrived at the cabin that night, Ryder carried Diana over the threshold, both of them laughing. He set her down gently and then pulled her close, kissing her with a passion that had been restrained for too long. "Welcome home, Mrs. Dalton," he whispered against her lips. "I liked the sound of that," Diana replied, smiling up at him. "Mrs. Dalton, Diana Dalton, it sounds perfect." That night they became truly husband and wife, discovering each other with tenderness and wonder. Diana had been nervous, unsure of what to expect, but Ryder was patient and gentle, making sure she felt safe and cherished. As they lay together afterward, Diana running her fingers through Ryder's hair while he held her close, she felt a profound sense of rightness. This was where she was meant to be, with this man, building a life together. "I cannot believe how different my life is from what I expected," Diana said softly. "A year ago, I was in Chicago working at the dress shop, dreaming of something more, but not knowing what. And now here I am, married to a wonderful man, living in this beautiful place. It feels like a dream." "If it is a dream, I do not want to wake up," Ryder said, kissing her forehead. "You are the best thing that has ever happened to me, Diana. I promise I will spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret choosing me." "I could never regret this," Diana assured him. "You saved me, Ryder. In every way a person can be saved." "You saved me too," Ryder replied. "I did not even realize how lonely I was until you came into my life and filled it with light." The first year of their marriage was filled with hard work but also great joy. Diana continued to work as the housekeeper for the main ranch house, and Ryder continued his work with the cattle. They would part each morning with a kiss and reunite each evening with relief and happiness, never taking for granted the gift they had been given in each other. In the spring, Diana discovered she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks but wanted to be sure before telling Ryder. When she finally shared the news with him, he picked her up and spun her around, laughing with pure joy. "We are going to be parents," he said wonderingly. "A baby, Diana? Our baby?" "Are you happy?" Diana asked, though she could see the answer on his face. "Happy does not even begin to cover it," Ryder replied. "I am overjoyed, amazed, terrified, all of it at once." The pregnancy progressed smoothly, and Diana continued to work as long as she was able. Mr. Douglas was understanding and reduced her duties as she grew larger, and the ranch hands were protective, always making sure she did not overexert herself. Ryder was constantly worrying about her, making sure she had everything she needed and checking on her multiple times a day. In late November of 1883, as the first snow of winter began to fall, Diana went into labor. Ryder sent Billy racing into town to fetch the doctor and the midwife, while he paced the cabin floor, nearly frantic with worry. Charlie stayed with him, trying to calm him down with stories and bad jokes, but Ryder could not settle until he heard the cry of his child. After hours of labor, Diana gave birth to a healthy baby boy. When Ryder was finally allowed into the bedroom, he found Diana exhausted but smiling, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in a blanket. "Come meet your son," she said softly. Ryder approached cautiously, as if afraid he might break something. But when he looked down at the small, red-faced baby, he felt his heart expand in a way he had not known was possible. This tiny person was his son, part of him and part of Diana, a living symbol of their love. "He is perfect," Ryder whispered, carefully touching the baby's tiny hand. The baby's fingers wrapped around Ryder's finger, and Ryder felt tears running down his face. "What should we name him?" "I was thinking Robert," Diana said. "Robert Douglas Dalton, after your father and Mr. Douglas, who has been like a father to both of us." "Robert," Ryder repeated, trying out the name. "I like it. Robert Douglas Dalton. Welcome to the world, son." The years that followed were filled with the normal struggles and joys of raising a family. Robert was a healthy, active baby who grew into a curious toddler. Diana proved to be a wonderful mother, patient and loving, while Ryder was the kind of father who always had time for his son, teaching him about horses and cattle and the land they lived on. When Robert was 2, Diana became pregnant again, and in the summer of 1886 they welcomed a daughter they named Rose. She had Diana's honey-colored eyes and Ryder's brown hair, and from the moment she was born she had both her parents wrapped around her tiny finger. Life on the ranch continued its rhythms. Seasons passed, each with its own demands and rewards. Ryder worked his way up to foreman, a position Mr. Douglas offered him in recognition of his hard work and dedication. With the increased pay, Ryder was able to start saving money, dreaming of the day when he and Diana might have a place of their own. But even as they worked toward the future, they cherished the present. Every evening after the children were asleep, Ryder and Diana would sit together on the porch of their cabin, holding hands and talking about their day. Diana often wore her grandmother's ring on these evenings, turning it absently as they talked. "I wish grandmother could have met you," Diana said one evening when the children were 3 and 5. "She would have loved you, Ryder. You are exactly the kind of man she always hoped I would find." "I wish I could have met her too," Ryder replied, "to thank her for the wisdom she passed on to you. That ring has become a symbol for us, has it not? A reminder of where we came from and what we are building together." "Yes," Diana agreed. "Sometimes I think about that day I arrived in Loveland, how lost and heartbroken I was. If someone had told me then that within a year I would be married to the love of my life with a baby on the way, I would not have believed them. But here we are." "Here we are," Ryder echoed, pulling her close. "And I thank God every day for putting me in the right place at the right time to meet you." In 1888, when Robert was 5 and Rose was 3, Mr. Douglas called Ryder and Diana to the main house for a serious conversation. They went with some trepidation, wondering if something was wrong, but Mr. Douglas quickly put their minds at ease. "I am getting old," he said without preamble, "and I have been thinking about the future of this ranch. I never had children of my own, as you know, and I have come to think of you both as the family I never had. Ryder, you have been like a son to me these past years. And Diana, you brought life and warmth back into this house when I needed it most." He paused, looking at them both with emotion clear on his weathered face. "I am not getting any younger, and I need to start making plans. I want to offer you a partnership in the ranch. You would own 1/3 of it now, and when I die, the rest would go to you and your children. This place needs young blood, people who will care for it and carry it into the future." Diana and Ryder looked at each other in shock. "Mr. Douglas, we do not know what to say," Ryder managed. "This is far more generous than we ever could have imagined." "You have earned it," Mr. Douglas said firmly. "Both of you. You have given years of loyal service and hard work. You have made this place a home, not just a business. Say you will accept. It would ease my mind to know the ranch will be in good hands." "Of course we accept," Diana said, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you, Mr. Douglas. Thank you for everything you have given us." The partnership changed everything. Ryder threw himself into learning every aspect of running the ranch, preparing for the day when he would be fully in charge. Diana continued to manage the household, but now she was no longer just an employee, but a partner, with a say in all decisions. As the children grew, they became part of the ranch life as well. Robert learned to ride almost as soon as he could walk, following his father around and absorbing everything he could about cattle and horses. Rose was quieter but just as observant, helping her mother in the house and learning to cook and sew and manage a household. In the summer of 1890, Diana became pregnant for a 3rd time, and in early 1891, they welcomed another son, whom they named Michael. He was a happy, easygoing baby who seemed content to observe the world around him with wide, curious eyes. The ranch prospered under Ryder's management. He had a gift for knowing what the cattle needed, when to buy and when to sell, how to get the most out of the land without exhausting it. He was fair with the hired hands, treating them with respect and paying them well, and as a result, the Double Bar had a reputation as one of the best places to work in northern Colorado. Diana continued to amaze Ryder with her strength and resilience. She managed not only their household, but also continued to oversee the cooking for all the ranch hands, organize community events in Loveland, and still found time to be a loving mother and wife. She had blossomed in Colorado, transforming from the lost, heartbroken woman he had met on the boarding house steps into a confident, capable woman who was respected throughout the county. In 1895, Mr. Douglas passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 72. His death hit Ryder and Diana hard, as he had become like a father to them both. But even in death, he gave them one final gift. His will left them the entirety of the Double Bar Ranch, along with a letter expressing his love and pride in the family they had built. "You took a chance on a desperate woman and a cowboy with more heart than sense," the letter read in part, and you built something beautiful together. Take care of this place, but more importantly, take care of each other and those precious children. That is the real treasure, the real legacy, not the land or the cattle, but the love you share. Never forget that." Diana read the letter aloud to Ryder, and they both wept, mourning the loss of a man who had meant so much to them. But they also felt the weight of responsibility settling onto their shoulders. The ranch was theirs now, to succeed or fail with, to pass on to their children. They did not fail. Under their joint management, the Double Bar continued to prosper. Ryder proved to be a shrewd businessman as well as a skilled rancher, and Diana's management of the household and her involvement in the community brought respect and goodwill that translated into business success. Their children grew into fine young adults. Robert proved to have his father's love of the land and his mother's sharp mind, becoming an invaluable partner in running the ranch. Rose grew into a beautiful young woman with a talent for healing, studying with the local doctor and eventually becoming a nurse. Michael turned out to have a gift for horses, able to train even the most difficult animals with patience and understanding. In the summer of 1900, when Robert was 17, a young woman named Sarah Mitchell arrived in Loveland with her family. She was 16, pretty and intelligent, and from the moment Robert laid eyes on her, he was smitten. Diana watched her son fall in love and could not help but smile, remembering her own journey to love. "He has it bad," Ryder observed one evening as they watched Robert ride off toward the Mitchell ranch for the third time that week. "He does," Diana agreed, "but Sarah is a good girl. Her family is respectable, and she seems to care for Robert too. I think they will make each other happy." "Just like we do," Ryder said, pulling Diana close. "Though I have to say I am not ready for my son to be courting. It makes me feel old." "We are getting older," Diana said with a smile, "but I would not change a single moment of our life together. Every gray hair, every wrinkle, every ache and pain, they all represent the life we have built, and I am grateful for every day." "So am I," Ryder replied, kissing the top of her head. "You know, I sometimes think about that day I met you sitting on those porch steps with your grandmother's ring. If I had ridden past 5 minutes earlier or 5 minutes later, our whole lives might have been different." "I think we were meant to find each other," Diana said. "Some things are just destined to be." She held up her left hand, where her grandmother's ring still gleamed alongside her wedding band. She had worn both rings every day for 17 years, and they had become part of her, symbols of the love that had shaped her life. "You know," Diana said thoughtfully, "Rose's 18th birthday is coming up. I have been thinking about passing grandmother's ring on to her the way it was passed to me, not to wear yet, but to keep safe until she finds her own true love." "That is a beautiful idea," Ryder said. "Your grandmother's love has been passed down through generations, and now it will continue with our daughter." On Rose's 18th birthday, Diana presented her daughter with the ring, telling her the story of how her great-great-grandmother had worn it in Ireland, how Diana's grandmother had worn it in Chicago, and how Diana herself had polished it with tears the day she arrived in Loveland, waiting for a love worthy of it. "I found that love with your father," Diana said, her eyes misty. "And someday, you will find your own love, someone who sees you for who you truly are and loves you for it. When you do, this ring will be waiting for you." Rose held the ring carefully, understanding the weight of the gift she had been given. "Thank you, Mama," she said softly. "I will treasure it always, and I promise to be worthy of the love it represents." The years continued to pass, bringing changes and challenges, but also great joys. Robert married Sarah Mitchell in 1902, and they built a house on the western edge of the ranch property, starting their own family. Rose continued her work as a nurse, becoming known throughout the county for her skill and compassion. Michael took over most of the horse training operations, developing a breeding program that became famous throughout Colorado. Ryder and Diana grew older together, their love deepening with each passing year. They faced hardships together, droughts and harsh winters, economic downturns and personal losses, but they always faced them as a team, drawing strength from each other. In the evenings, they still sat on their porch, now weathered and worn but still sturdy, holding hands and talking about their day. Sometimes they would reminisce about the past, remembering the early days when they were young and everything was new. Other times they would talk about the future, about their children and grandchildren, about the legacy they were building together. Do you ever think about what would have happened if Thomas Whitmore had been the man he claimed to be in his letters? Ryder asked one evening, in the summer of 1905. They were both in their late 40s now, with gray streaking their hair and lines marking their faces, but to each other they were still as beautiful as they had been when they first met. No, Diana said honestly, because he could never have been that man. A man who would deceive a woman the way he deceived me, who would forget her existence while drunk in a saloon, that is not a man capable of true love. I think God knew what I needed better than I did. He brought me to Loveland not for Thomas Whitmore, but for you. Every disappointment, every heartbreak I suffered before that day led me to exactly where I was supposed to be. I feel the same way, Ryder said. Every hard thing I went through, every loss and struggle, it all had a purpose. It was all leading me to that moment when I would see you sitting on those steps looking so lost and heartbroken and know that my life was about to change forever. We have been blessed, Diana said softly. We have our health, our children and grandchildren, this beautiful land, and most importantly, we have each other. Not everyone gets to have a love like ours. No, they do not. Mo, Ryder agreed. We are lucky, but it is not just luck, Diana. We have worked for this. We have chosen to love each other every day, even when it was hard, even when we disagreed or were tired or frustrated. That is what real love is, a choice you make every single day. In 1910, Diana and Ryder celebrated their 27th wedding anniversary. Their children threw them a party at the ranch, inviting friends and neighbors from all over the county. The main house was filled with laughter and music, with multiple generations of families celebrating together. As Diana looked around at the life they had built, at the children and grandchildren who filled the house with noise and love, at the husband who still made her heart skip a beat when he smiled at her, she felt a profound sense of gratitude and contentment. That evening, after all the guests had left and the children had gone home to their own families, Diana and Ryder walked out to the small rise where Ryder had proposed all those years ago. The moon was full, just as it had been that night, and the land stretched out before them, beautiful and familiar. 27 years, Diana said wonderingly. Where did the time go? I do not know, Ryder replied, wrapping his arm around her waist, but I would not trade a single moment of it. You are still the most beautiful woman I have ever seen, and I love you more today than I did on our wedding day. I love you too, Diana said, leaning into his warmth. Thank you for seeing me that day, for stopping and offering help to a stranger. Thank you for every day since then, for every moment of love and laughter and even the hard times we faced together. You are my best friend, my partner, the love of my life. They stood there in the moonlight holding each other close. Two people who had found each other against all odds and built a life together that exceeded their wildest dreams. The rings on Diana's finger caught the moonlight, her grandmother's band and her wedding ring, both symbols of the enduring power of love. The ranch continued to thrive under their management, becoming one of the most successful operations in northern Colorado. But more than the financial success, the Double Bar became known as a place where people were treated fairly, where families could build lives, and where love and loyalty mattered more than profit. As they grew older, Ryder and Diana began to gradually hand over more of the day-to-day operations to their children. Robert took over most of the cattle operations, Michael continued with the horses, and Rose, though focused on her nursing career, helped manage the business side of things. Diana and Ryder remained involved, offering advice and guidance, but they also took time to enjoy the fruits of their labor. They traveled a bit, visiting places they had never seen. They took a trip to Chicago so Ryder could see where Diana had grown up, standing in front of the boarding house where she had lived and the dress shop where she had worked. They visited the graves of her mother and grandmother, and Diana laid flowers on the graves, silently thanking them for the lessons and love they had given her. They also traveled back to Nebraska so Diana could see where Ryder had grown up. They stood on the land where his family farm had been, now owned by his brother's grandchildren, and Ryder told Diana stories of his childhood, of his parents and brothers, of the life he had lived before coming to Colorado. But always, they were happy to return to the Double Bar, to the land that had become their home, to the family they had built together. This was where they belonged, where their roots had grown deep and strong. In 1915, as World War I raged in Europe, Diana and Ryder celebrated 32 years of marriage. They were both in their late 50s now, grandparents many times over, their hair more gray than brown, their bodies marked by years of hard work. But they still looked at each other with love, still held hands when they walked, still kissed each other goodnight every evening. One evening that summer, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, Rose came to visit with news. She had met a man, a doctor, who had recently moved to Loveland from Denver. His name was James, and he was kind and intelligent, dedicated to his work, but also with a good sense of humor. They had been courting for 3 months, and Rose believed he was the one. "He has asked me to marry him," Rose said, her face glowing with happiness. "And I said yes, but Mama, I want to wear Grandmother's ring when I marry him. Would that be all right?" Diana felt tears spring to her eyes. She had been waiting for this moment, knowing it would come someday. She reached for Rose's hand and squeezed it gently. "Nothing would make me happier," Diana said. "That ring has been waiting for you to find your true love, and if you believe James is that man, then it is time for you to wear it." The wedding took place in the fall of 1915, a beautiful ceremony that brought together family and friends from all over Colorado. Rose wore a dress Diana had made for her, and on her finger she wore her great-great-grandmother's ring, the gold band that had traveled from Ireland to Chicago to Colorado, passing through generations and carrying with it the promise of enduring love. As Diana watched her daughter exchange vows with her new husband, she felt Ryder's hand squeeze hers. She looked up at him and saw tears in his eyes, matching her own. "Our baby girl is all grown up," he whispered. "She is," Diana agreed, "but she has found what we found, a love worth waiting for, worth fighting for, worth building a life on." The years that followed were peaceful and happy. Diana and Ryder spent more time with their grandchildren, passing on stories and wisdom, teaching them about the land and the values that had guided their lives. They watched their children succeed and prosper, building their own legacies while honoring the foundation their parents had laid. In the evenings, when the work was done and the house was quiet, Diana and Ryder would still sit together on their porch. Sometimes they talked, sometimes they simply enjoyed the silence, comfortable in each other's presence after decades together. "Do you remember what you said to me that first night?" Diana asked one evening in 1920. They were both in their early 60s now, still active but moving a bit slower, feeling the weight of years. "When I told you about Grandmother's ring and how I could not wear it because I had not found a love worthy of it?" "I remember," Ryder said, smiling at the memory. "I said it was the kind of love worth waiting for." "You were right," Diana said softly, "or it was worth waiting for. Worth every moment of uncertainty and fear, worth traveling halfway across the country and having my heart broken because it all led me to you." "And it led me to you," Ryder replied, pulling her close. "The best thing I ever did in my life was stop on those porch steps and talk to a beautiful woman who was polishing a ring she could not wear. That one decision changed everything." "We changed everything together," Diana corrected gently. "That is the secret, is it not? Real love is not about grand gestures or perfect moments. It is about choosing each other every day, through good times and hard times, through joy and sorrow. It is about building a life together brick by brick, moment by moment, until you have created something beautiful and lasting." "You are right," Ryder said. "And what we have built together, what we have created, it will last long after we are gone. Our children and grandchildren will carry on, and they will remember the love that started it all." As the 1920s progressed, Diana and Ryder settled fully into their role as the elder generation of the family. They were respected and beloved, sought out for advice and wisdom, treasured for the example they set of what a true partnership should be. They saw their grandchildren grow up and begin families of their own, saw the ranch continue to prosper under Robert's management, saw Rose become one of the most respected nurses in Colorado, saw Michael's horse breeding program gain national recognition. Through it all, they remained devoted to each other, to each. Ryder still brought Diana wildflowers from his rides, still kissed her every morning before starting his day and every evening before bed. Diana still made Ryder's favorite foods, still sat with him in the evenings, still held his hand as they watched the sunset. In the spring of 1925, as they approached their 42nd wedding anniversary, Ryder became ill with pneumonia. Despite Diana's careful nursing and the best medical care available, he weakened rapidly. The family gathered around knowing that the end was near. On a clear April morning, with Diana holding his hand and his children and grandchildren surrounding his bed, Ryder Dalton passed away peacefully at the age of 69. His last words were to Diana, a whispered "I love you" that she carried in her heart. Diana was devastated by Ryder's death. After 42 years of marriage, of sharing every day together, the loss felt unbearable. But she was sustained by her children and grandchildren, by the love of the community, and by the knowledge that what she and Ryder had shared would never truly die. She continued to live on the ranch, helping where she could, but mostly spending her time with her family and working in the garden Ryder had built for her so many years ago. She wore both rings every day, her grandmother's band and her wedding ring, turning them absently as she remembered her life with the man she had loved. In the evening, she would sit on the porch of the cabin she and Ryder had shared, looking out over the land they had built together. Sometimes she swore she could feel his presence, as if he was sitting beside her the way he always had, holding her hand and watching the sunset. Diana lived for another 7 years after Ryder's death, passing away peacefully in her sleep in the summer of 1932 at the age of 73. She was laid to rest beside Ryder in the family cemetery on the ranch, under a simple headstone that read, "Diana Northwood Dalton, beloved wife, mother, and grandmother. She found love and built a legacy." But the legacy they built together lived on. The Double Bar Ranch continued to prosper under the management of their children and grandchildren. The values they had instilled, hard work, honesty, loyalty, and above all love, continued to guide the family. Rose passed her great-great-grandmother's ring onto her own daughter when she married, continuing the tradition. The ring traveled through generations, each woman wearing it as a symbol of the love she had found, carrying with it the story of Diana and Ryder, of a cowboy who stopped to help a heartbroken woman and found the love of his life. Years later, when Robert's grandchildren asked about their great-grandparents, he would tell them the story. He would talk about the day his father brought his mother to the ranch, about how they had fallen in love and built a life together from nothing. He would describe how they had worked side by side, raising a family and building a legacy that had lasted for generations. But most importantly, he would tell them about the ring, about how his mother had been sitting on porch steps in Loveland polishing her grandmother's wedding band, a ring she could not wear because she had not yet found a love worthy of it. He would describe how his father had seen her and known somehow that his life was about to change forever. That is what real love looks like, he would tell them. It is not about finding someone perfect. It is about finding someone perfect for you, someone who sees you at your worst and loves you anyway, someone who will stand beside you through everything life throws at you. Your great-grandparents had that kind of love, and it shaped everything that came after. The story became family legend, passed down through generations, a reminder of the power of love to transform lives and build legacies. And somewhere in a jewelry box carefully preserved and treasured, a simple gold ring with delicate etching continued to wait, ready to be worn by the next generation when they found their own true love, carrying with it the promise that real love, like the ring itself, can endure forever. The tale of the cowboy who found her polishing a ring she could not wear, who heard her say, "It was my grandmother's wedding band," and who became the love that made her worthy to wear it, remained a testament to the enduring power of love, to the magic of being in the right place at the right time, and to the beautiful life that can be built when two people commit to choosing each other every single day, no matter what challenges they face.